Now, Ecleynne Mercy, criminal defense attorney, David Schnipper, criminal defense attorney, and DeWitt Lacey, civil rights attorney, former criminal defense attorney. I want to get your feelings, all of you, on where we are now after the weekend, after what we've seen take place, after we've seen not only the initial video, but now different versions of the video, different vantage points where we're seeing all four officers at one point on top of George Floyd. Ecleynne, to you, what feelings do you have, did you have this weekend watching the demonstrations, some getting out of hand, others very peaceful, and all of the video, the charges? Where are you personally?
It just hopeless, actually. It's like when America basically says, like, your smile offends them. So let's make sure that you just don't ever smile. Like, we can't go outside. We can't do what we need to do. These kids are crying out for help. They tried to do it peacefully, right? They even had a Colin Kaepernick try to do it peacefully. And instead of taking his word for it, y'all changed it and said it was about the armed forces. So that means that the Black words don't matter. Our words don't matter because George Floyd said, "I can't breathe," and he was disregarded by four people of the law enforcement. Then I hear law enforcement say, "Hey, it's only 1% of law enforcement that are the bad apples." However, my citizens, the people, the babies that are protesting right now, 99% of their interactions are negative. So they're angry. And the issue is that you didn't need an independent autopsy to find out that George Floyd was killed by that man. Everybody with eyes knew that. But a whole prosecution office took their time to prosecute. That's a problem. Four officers killed that man, watched him die, said nothing, and they actually had jobs. So we don't even know the extent how bad it gets in Minneapolis. So when people see that, it's people being hopeless. They feel hopeless. They tried to tell you, you didn't listen. They wrote songs about it. You didn't care. Movies were made. You didn't watch them. Things were being said and done. You didn't do it. And now the only way to get your attention is to crash in a Gucci store, and you're more concerned about the Gucci store than the kids. So yes, I'm a bit hopeless.
David Schnipper, everybody has different feelings, and Ecleynne, I hate for you to go after Ecleynne, but where are you in this?
Bizarre times we're in today with the COVID-19 situation, to the Aubrey situation in Brunswick, Georgia. To my heart goes out to George Floyd, his family. He's got two brothers, a sister. As you see Larry Bird in my background, I'm a huge basketball fan. I played regularly. Steven Jackson, a former NBA player, world champion for the Spurs in '03, who grew up with George Floyd. They actually look very similar. They call each other twins. Has really come out, and talk very favorably of what a great person he is. And from my research, he was a really, really good guy. Like I saw, he was trying to find himself. He moved to Minnesota not too long ago, I think a few years ago, to try to kind of get a fresh start. He had a 6-year-old daughter. This is egregious. It's disgusting. I'm in the hope that, Derek Chavin's a bad apple. He's a bad seed. He's a bad man. I think that the federal government and the local government, the authorities, after this happened, did a good job. He was charged 4 days later. All of them lost their jobs. Will the other three be charged? I don't know. I think it's an interesting topic. I think that they will, but I also think there is a issue with race, especially in Minnesota. You have Mike Freeman, who's had a problem with a lot of the African American people there for a long time, and Keith Ellison now is coming in. He's an African American attorney general, who the sheriff and actually Mr. Freeman and the governor have both requested, and that is very, very, very. It never happens, or rarely happens. The attorney general is going to take over a case at the state level. So, I mean, this situation, as we all know, has just taken taken a life of its own. But I want to say, as an American, as somebody who loves all races and everybody, maybe this will, bring us together.
DeWitt, Ecleynne says she's hopeless, but is there a silver lining anywhere here, or where are you coming in on this?
I don't know that I would weigh in on the side of hopelessness. I'm a civil rights attorney by trade, so I have to have hope, or you fall into despair. I think what's happened thus far has been very characteristic of district attorneys' offices in regards to police or officer-involved deaths. That happens all over the country. That goes for here in California as well. In some regards, I agree with what's been said. I think that the district attorney's office had demonstrated they lacked the will to do what was necessary. That is to prosecute the officers that we all seen with our own eyes were guilty and responsible for the death of Mr. Floyd. However, I think we do know what happens in Minnesota. We do know how bad it gets in Minneapolis, and this was demonstrated just years ago upon the death of Philando Castile, another black man who wasn't committing any crimes, who was killed before our eyes and was told by prosecution and a trial that he was killed legitimately. I think if there is any silver lining right now, it is that we got Ellison, the AG, to step in and perhaps prosecute this thing honestly. I think the other officers involved in this definitely played a role in Mr. Floyd's death, and they should face charges as well.
Ecleynne,
we'll
having the AG take over, having all 4 officers fired instantly by the police chief there, who was part of the demonstrations, who has really been extraordinary in his openness in Minneapolis there. Are you hopeful that this might be different, and at least from the back end of where we are now, that is there a chance here that this may make change, or is this just going to be another chapter in this evolving story?
I mean, to be real honest, I don't think so. Like he stated, Philando Castile happened in Minneapolis and nothing changed. Matter of fact, they were emboldened to do it in front of cameras and were able to roam the streets for 4 days. Then you have Tamar, if we're going by examples, Tamar Rice, the officer in Tamar Rice, was fired and then was hired by another precinct. So to say that there's hope for change, they have not changed anything. All we keep saying is thoughts and prayers. All they keep saying is we're going to look into it. We have not seen a detailed plan on how to attack racial biases within our law enforcement. We have racists within our law enforcement. It is built on racist practices that we need to address because it is killing Black people, Black and brown people, without probable cause, without reasonable suspicion, without any of that. And even if there was probable cause or reasonable suspicion, we should have law enforcement officers that major in de-escalation. My issue is sorry.
All right, we need to take a break. When we come back, you all will still be with us. We'll talk more about the death of George Floyd. Plus, Scott Peterson, he's going to have a chance at the Supreme Court of California to articulate through his attorney his appeal. Talk about that as well. Stay with us.
This has clearly been a crisis unlike any our city or state has ever seen, and I think it's becoming increasingly clear that it's one that demanded a state-supported and guard-sized response. And the governor mentioned just a little bit ago that we have not seen this kind of mobilization since World War II.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the death of George Floyd. Still with me, criminal defense attorney Ecleynne Mercy, David Schnipper, criminal defense attorney, and civil rights attorney DeWitt Lacey. Today, Derek Chauvin, the former, now disgraced Minneapolis police officer who is facing third-degree murder and manslaughter charges, was moved. And this is a new mugshot just released late this afternoon. You can see he might have maybe a little black eye there. He definitely looks a little worse for wear after a few days in incarceration. His case he was to have his first court appearance this afternoon. That was pushed back until next week, but he has been moved to a different facility. David Schnipper, the charges against him, third-degree murder and manslaughter, they seem, when you look at the video, that this won't be much of a stretch in terms of proving it for the state. The family wants first-degree murder. That may be a lot more difficult. What's your take? What should he be facing?
I'll real quick. I understand the family wholeheartedly, and I get that. But as my criminal defense attorney line, this really is third degree. You have to have intent to kill. With first degree in Minnesota, I go over to somebody's house and I intend to kill them, and it's in my mind. I'm going to kill them. The second degree in Minnesota is you have intent to kill, but not right away. You get into a fight with somebody, and you ended up killing them. I don't think that officer or former officer Chauvin's mindset, and this is just my subjective view, was that he intended to kill him right away. Now, third degree is a difference of life. It's a difference of life. Yes, it is. Yes, ma'am, it does matter in Minnesota. It does. If you read the statutes.
The time when 8 minutes, he was 8 minutes. When intent formed, the moment he says, I can't breathe, that means that you knew that this man couldn't breathe, and you need breath to be able to be alive. So what did he do? He intended to kill him, because he did not say, I can't breathe, not once, not twice. There were 8 minutes.
Ma'am,
this was seconds.
You're not letting me finish. You're not letting me finish. I didn't interrupt you, did I? Did I interrupt you?
You got it, homie.
Let him finish, Ecleynne, and then we'll go back to you. But quickly, David.
Under Minnesota law, I don't think that third degree murder is. I think it is the appropriate charge. Now, could it be amended? Could it be changed to first degree murder? It could. Now, I haven't looked at the video as closely. I've seen it one or two times as closely as the charging agency. But from where it's with an indifference of life, a depraved heart under the Minnesota statute, third degree murder does seem like the appropriate charge.
The intent the intent to Ecleynne, your point is that once he's down there and people are videoing and saying, "Hey, he can't talk," he can't breathe. You gotta get off the guy. That is where you're saying that you could. It's pretty hard to prove, though, wouldn't it be? I mean, they think that this officer wanted to ruin his life and ruin his career and kill a guy while he's being videotaped?
He is looking at the tape when he's doing it. There was no remorse at all. There was no remorse for putting his knee on that man's neck. But couldn't you argue it's because he didn't think he was killing him? He was just restraining him in his demented way. That's when black words don't matter. When a man is telling you, I can't breathe, I'm going to die, please call my mother, that means that I can't breathe. I feel like I'm going to die. Please call my mother.
DeWitt, what's your take?
Ecleynne, if I can jump in here and go a little bit further. Look, what we all got to realize is that officers are trained. Okay, they're trained on the issue of positional restraint, asphyxia, all right? They understand and go through a lot of training related to putting pressure on somebody's back, having somebody lie prone or with handcuffs or with weight on their back, and the dangerous effects of that. So I don't believe for a minute that Chauvin had his knee on Mr. Floyd's back and had no idea that there posed a significant risk to his life. I think he understood that. I think he was trained about that, and I think he disregarded the risk, if not purposely and or intentionally causing Mr. Floyd great bodily harm. Now, whether or not that amounts to first-degree murder, I agree. That might be tough, especially under Minnesota statute. However, I think that third-degree murder it should be a shoo-in, and I don't think first-degree murder should be put out of the question, especially considering that these two knew each other beforehand. So it wasn't like that Chauvin did not know him.
Yeah, well, it's debatable on how well they knew each other. Both worked at the same bar as a bouncer, potentially. I want to go around and talk about the other three. We'll start with you, DeWitt. What should happen to those other officers that were sitting there, first of all, putting their weight on him, and then just doing nothing when he's pleading for his life, and when bystanders are pleading for this individual's life? What should happen to them? Should they be charged criminally? They've lost their job.
Yes, absolutely. And one, for putting their knees in his back and holding weight on him. We know that the family's second and independent autopsy shows that that was a cause of death. Secondly, because officers have a duty to intercede when they see that someone is going beyond the means of what's necessary in their use of force. It is clear here, and it should have been clear to any officer who was standing by or involved, that Mr. Floyd was in serious danger of death or serious bodily harm, and they did absolutely nothing. And for that, they should face criminal charges. We'll just have to see what the AG is going to do with that.
David Schnipper, the other three?
I agree 100% with my colleague. Absolutely, they should face charges. The million-dollar question is, what should they face? I think his name was, and I think his sister was actually married to Chauvin, the Asian officer in the front. Yeah, Tao. I mean, he in the front, and as my colleague said, they had a duty to intercede. They all were involved. Are they going to be brought up on murder charges, manslaughter charges, aiding and abetting, a party to a crime? I don't know. I think that, we have to go through Minnesota law to really to break that down. But I think that you're going to see charges on the rest of the officers very shortly.
Tao, Chauvin's wife, for the record, did issue a statement today saying she's actually divorcing him. She's disgusted by this and asking for people
Chauvin had a very bad week.
Yeah. Ecleynne, the final word from you on this for now. We're going to take a break after this, but what should happen to the other three?
I think they should be brought up on felony murder charges. Like we learned in law school, if I commit an armed robbery and somebody has a heart attack, we are all going down for this murder. So I think that they saw an aggravated assault as protectors of the community to protect and serve, disregarded all their training, every last bit of it, and watched that man die. So they should be charged accordingly.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Scott Peterson. He'll have his appeal heard in front of the California Supreme Court tomorrow. Does he have a chance? We'll be right back. Welcome back. We'll have more on George Floyd in just a bit. But first, tomorrow afternoon, convicted murderer Scott Peterson will have his appeal heard in front of the California State Supreme Court. It has been 15 years since Peterson was found guilty and sentenced to death for the murder of his wife, Lacey, and unborn son, Connor. This case has had so much publicity over the years that people who were involved became household names, including the lawyers, family members, and of course, Peterson's girlfriend, Amber Frey. Since then, some of those people have passed away. Others have new jobs. Take a look.
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Lacey Denise Peterson.
Since his conviction, Scott Peterson has been housed here at San Quentin State Prison, home to California's death row. These are his mugshots from his arrest in 2003 through the most recent photo released in 2018. Peterson's life on death row includes a single cell with a TV, access to books, art supplies, and phone calls.
You are allowed to go out on a yard with a group. Usually some people on death row are not allowed. They're alone all the time, but Scott is allowed to have yard time and participate with other inmates.
That's Scott's sister-in-law, Janie Peterson, who since the conviction has helped work on Peterson's appeal and, along with other family members, has made frequent trips to San Quentin for visits. Jackie Peterson, Scott's mother, who was on oxygen at the time of Lacey's disappearance, passed away in 2013, believing up until her death that her son had been wrongly convicted. Lee Peterson, Scott's father, is still living in San Diego.
He's doing okay. Unless you understand how heavy this injustice is, it's hard to understand how he's doing. But given the circumstances, he's doing well.
Please bring our daughter home.
Lacey's mother, Sharon Rocha, whose heartbreak touched millions of people, released a book in 2006 titled For Lacey. Though she initially supported Scott during the first few weeks of Lacey's disappearance, once convinced of his guilt, she remains steadfast in her belief that Scott Peterson murdered her daughter and grandson. In 2008, she told the Modesto Bee how life has changed forever.
I've realized that so many things that seemed to be so important before just aren't important.
My daughter presented this morning. She's 8 months pregnant.
The 911 call to police was made by Lacey's stepfather, Ron Gransky. He was a steady voice of strength for the family. At one time, he was very close to Scott, but also was convinced of his guilt.
But justice was served.
Ron Gransky died in 2018 and is now buried next to Lacey and Connor, as is Lacey's biological father, Dennis Rocha, who also passed away in 2018. His emotional breakdown during a news conference seemed to be felt by people around the world.
For your continued efforts in finding my daughter. Now we can move forward. Now justice can be done.
The attorneys also left a lasting impression on those who followed the trial. Prosecutor Rick DeStasso became a military judge, currently serving in the Army's 4th Judicial Circuit. Dave Harris was promoted to lead deputy district attorney, and prosecutor Birgit Flattinger was elected district attorney of Stanislaus County in 2006 and continues in that role today. Mark Garagos, Scott Peterson's defense attorney, continues to represent high-profile clients. Judge Alfred DeLucchi died in 2008 after battling cancer for several years.
We did have a romantic relationship.
Amber Fry, the so-called other woman, became the state's star witness at trial. She secretly recorded conversations with Peterson, providing prosecutors with some of the most damning evidence. She is now 45 years old with 2 children. In 2015, she told the Today Show that she has no regrets about coming forward and helping put Scott Peterson away for life.
I don't regret anything, and as crazy as it sounds, as what came out and whatnot, that I would do it all over again, because it wasn't about me. There was a missing woman carrying a child that if I had something to say or that would help, yeah, without question.
All right, Ecleynne, Mercy, David Schnipper, and DeWitt Lacey still with me. Tomorrow, Peterson gets his opportunity in front of the state Supreme Court in California. This is an opportunity afforded everyone who is on death row. It's not a special. He doesn't have anything special going for him. DeWitt, to you first. You're out in Los Angeles. This was a case that was highly visible. People watched this around the world. And many people think, oh, gosh, there's nothing to this. He is guilty, guilty, guilty. But the defense has a few things that they are going to bring up, and they could be significant. What's your take on his possible, the odds that he may possibly be successful with this appeal?
Well, it seems like in the appeal, they're going to try to get the case set for a new trial because the case was not moved to a further location. I mean, when this case first hit, it was all over the news in Northern California. It didn't have that same effect in Southern California, though I'm sure there were many there who understood it and knew about the case there as well. I don't know that will be successful before the California Supreme Court to get a new trial because the case wasn't moved. As well, it seems that the defense wants to make a big appeal to the Supreme Court about the use of some evidence at trial that they felt should not have been used, and that is specifically that there was a canine that found or gave a direction to the location of where Lacey Peterson's body was. I again don't think that will lead to an overturn of the trial and allow for a new trial. Maybe they have a better chance on habeas corpus, but we'll see.
And the habeas has also been filed, and at some point he's on death row. That will be adopted also and looked at by the state Supreme Court. David Schnipper, one of the other things that the defense has brought up is this video that they made that showed that Scott Peterson couldn't have thrown his pregnant wife overboard on a 14-foot boat from the San Francisco Bay because when they did their video experiment, the boat capsized. The judge in the case, Alfred DeLucchi, said, no, that's not coming in. There's too many variables. but the jury was able to get into the actual boat and sort of wobble around in it during jury deliberations. Does this have any weight, this argument? Should this have either come in, or the fact that the jury was able to jump into that boat during deliberations and conduct their own experiment, is that a problem?
Well, I mean, the judge made a ruling back in 2004 when the trial happened, and each judge has their own set of eyes and allows things in under their own respective states' laws, what they deem should be admissible, not admissible. And there's obviously pretrial hearings from both sides to argue their both points. But bottom line is, was Scott Peterson's, the judgment he's attacking, is it invalid because was his constitutional rights violated? And that's basically the theme of post-conviction relief. And as my colleague was just saying, that post-conviction relief is very difficult to overcome. I mean, we had a trial, there was a jury. Other things that I heard was there was an issue with a juror that potentially maybe had lied. Obviously, he mentioned the venue, only 90 miles out. Also Mark Geragos, who everybody knows who he is. He's one of the most respected defense attorneys in the country, has been for a while, but ineffective counsel. But listen, Scott Peterson's on death row. He has a right to have this appeal, the habeas corpus, and this is probably, from what I'm understanding, his last hurrah. I don't expect him to win, and then his situation will then, unfortunately for him, end.
All right, we need to move along. Ecleynne, yes or no? Will he be successful?
No.
All right, let's move on. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more. George Floyd, stay with us. You watch Court TV.
They just threw something on fire, Chris, a firecracker. Something's on fire.
Welcome back. Those are some of the scenes taking place over the weekend as protests in some instances in some cities became violent. Time for our 13th juror question of the day. And the question is, what should happen to protesters who cross the line? Robin Watkins has the comment of the day. They should be arrested, she says. Protesting is one thing. We need to protest what happened. However, busting out windows so you can go in and loot the store ruins the message of what people are marching for. People stop listening to the message when the violence starts happening. Martin Luther King was right when he said peaceful protest. Ecleynne Mercy, your take on that?
I love how people pick and choose what Martin Luther King says, friend, and I cannot. That's not what he said. That's not what he said. There's a moment in which peaceful protests do not work anymore. We have tried the peaceful. You have seen the peaceful protests. Y'all got upset and said it ruined traffic. We have tried to kneel. Y'all got upset and said it was against the military. We have tried everything. You are dealing with a section of people who have literally exhausted all options. And the only time in which they got national coverage is when they started breaking windows. It's not their problem. It's the law enforcement knew we had a problem since 2014 with Mike Brown. I'll stop there. And did nothing. They had no plans for this at all. So it's not their fault. You can't peacefully protest because they tried and it doesn't work.
All right. Pam Norwork says, first of all, they are not protesters. They are performing criminal acts and should be charged as such. If you really believe that no one is above the law, then that applies to everyone. David Schnipper, where do you come in on that?
I mean, if you're going to egregiously break the law and break windows and take out people's businesses, you should be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Now, if you break the law and it's not that big of a deal, then then let it go. But I mean, you can't.
Is this a big deal? Well, that's the question.
It's not a big deal.
What we're saying, someone loots it. Ecleynne, I assume that you're saying that they should not.
I don't agree with Ecleynne at all. I don't listen, and I respect everything. I don't agree with it. We can't. Two wrongs don't make a right. It's not, and it's not just. It's not. Ecleynne, it's my turn to talk. It's not just African Americans that are protesting now. It's other people are coming in the woodwork. So it's a bunch of different groups now that are doing this. But we can't. We can't. Needs to be law enforcement. We can't be breaking windows and harming people.
That's not, you've already said that it's outside agitators. You've already said that it's outside agitators that are
some
doing
of them is.
That's what it is.
I don't know exactly who it is.
Let's get the win in.
Be clear.
Breaking windows and looting stores and hurting people.
Hold on.
What they're saying is the same concern should be spent for Black lives. That's all we're saying. That same concern, that same feeling about looting. I need y'all to feel the same energy. Give me the same energy.
Anybody who loots stores and breaks windows and ruins businesses should be arrested and prosecuted by the Florida
for George Floyd, the same energy for Ahmaud Arbery, the same energy.
Let the wit get in here.
But we don't need to break windows and loot stores, ma'am.
And they don't need to kill Black men. They don't need to kill Black men.
100%. But looting stores. How many African American businesses stores are being looted?
I need y'all.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Then don't kill Black men, and those who kill them, let them get convicted. If y'all talking about arresting people, go on and arrest these officers that are still free. Those 3 officers that are still free.
We're not talking about that, ma'am. We're not talking about that.
Are still
they are
free.
going to.
You can't compartmentalize the struggle. You can't do that. You can't do that.
You're taking one thing
are still
one has
free,
nothing to do with the other. We're talking about looting stores and breaking windows.
All right, we gotta leave it there. Hold on, we gotta leave it there. We're out of time. DeWitt has the final. David, DeWitt has the final word. 30 seconds. Your thoughts. What do we do about the protesters?
Great. Look, I think a lot of people are invoking MLK and not necessarily understand the fullness of his message. If you read MLK's letter from Birmingham jail, a phrase that's been said a lot over the last few days is protest and riots are the voice of the unheard. And many of these folks in Minneapolis and around the nation have felt like they have not been heard. And so you're getting protests, and that is people walking in the streets. Sometimes that turns into and parlays into violence. Obviously, I do believe, look, if you're committing crimes, yes, there's got to be a consequence of that, right? However, the focus, I would agree, should not be on the crimes that are being committed at the protests. Because I believe, if the district attorney had the heart to do what they needed to do, maybe we wouldn't be here in the first place.
All right, David Lacey, David Schnipper, Ecleynne Mercy, thank you for the spirited discussion over the past hour. Thank you for joining us over the past 3 hours. We will be back here tomorrow night. This is Court TV, your front row seats to justice.